I'm here today with probably one of the most amazing people that I've ever had the privilege to meet, and I've met quite a few. She is the founder and president of the Wellness Health Forum in Columbus, Ohio, and this is something that offers the information to help you facilitate to make informed medical decisions. It offers diet, lifestyle interventions, and improved, long-term health. Dr. Pam Popper, thank you for taking the time to meet with me today.
Well, thank you. We had a really good time last time. I remember the time went really fast because we just got to chatting like old friends, which we've actually become.
I
And
know.
and the topic is I think that we could probably do 20 episodes like this
Oh my
on
gosh.
the
Well, and
topic.
I just have to say, I got to get this out there because I took your course on women's health.
Hmm.
Every woman should have to take this. It should be required. I mean,
Oh,
seriously.
thank you.
I mean,
Thanks.
I learned so much from this course, and I can't say enough about it. And I think one of the biggest things that I learned from that was the starting age of when girls start becoming online now, as I
Yes.
put it. And I just is shocked. I'm just shocked.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and goes to your point, when you take educational programs, what happens is people go from being frightened about their state of health because they right now with the average person out there who has something wrong, and it can be anything from a hormone imbalance to pain or cancer or arthritis, whatever it is. Well, when you think it's genes and bad luck, you're pretty helpless. And when
right.
you don't know what causes it, you don't know what to do to fix it. So when you say, look, why don't we just start by having you get an understanding of what's going on here? And once people have that, it doesn't make them like being sick, but it does make them feel like, gosh, this is a solvable problem. Okay. It's sort
Right.
of like if you don't know what's wrong with your car and somebody tells you what it is, and then they say, we can fix it. This is how much it costs. You don't necessarily like writing the check, but you sure do like having your car running again. So
Yes.
we're sort of like just much more complicated cars, right?
Well, I use that example. When I win lotto, my first purchase is going to be a 1969 metallic blue convertible Corvette with Starch
Ah,
Queens. Starch Queens will be the license plate, okay? And kerosene, great fuel. But if you're putting kerosene in that car, you're going to kill that car, and I will cry because you're going to kill that engine. So,
exactly,
yeah.
exactly.
So today we're talking about menopause because wow, I mean, I've already gone through it, so thank you. I'm
Me
done.
too.
I'm survived. But there's a lot of people that are starting, perimenopause and going through menopause and then, some of the issues that go along with it. So what is menopause?
Well, menopause is technically the last menstrual period. We have tended to refer to it as a process, like I'm going through menopause, which is the period of time when you notice that everything's changing, your menstrual periods are irregular, and the bleeding is irregular, and you know something's going on, and eventually one day you wake up and say, I haven't had a menstrual period for a long, long time. I must be finished with menopause now. But technically that last menstrual period is menopause.
Okay. Well, what governs the age of when you start this process?
There's a little bit of heredity involved. Another thing is exposure to estrogen. So you mentioned earlier about young girls
Oh,
beginning to sexually develop and have their menstrual periods younger and younger and younger ages. I mean, I've seen kids who started in the second grade. Okay, this is for very scary stuff. And then continuing menstrual periods till people are 55, 56 years old. So why is this happening? It's because of high estrogen levels, which are related to a lot of things, including the consumption of estrogen and estrogen metabolites in dairy products that people are eating. So it's a little bit of heredity and is a lot of diet and lifestyle choices, weight status, that sort of thing. But ideally, what should happen is you start your menstrual periods when you are a teenager. In rural China, at one time, it was average age 17. And sometime around your late 40s, you're done. And this is nature's way of making sure that women have enough time in their lifespan to raise their children before they die. So if we were menstruating and having babies at 78 years old, obviously we'd be leaving a lot of orphan children for somebody else to take care of. So
right.
so that's nature's plan for making sure the species is perpetuated, but that children are raised under ideal circumstances by their
Right.
mother.
Right.
Yeah.
So give us an overview of the stages.
Well, of menopause.
Right.
Well, it can be so many stages that go on for so long. In other words, I speak with women who sometimes will say something like, things started getting a little wonky, like when I was in my early 40s. And I've had 10 years, I'm speaking, these women, I've had 10 years of irregular menstrual periods, and then I'll have two in 1 month and nothing for three, and I'll bleed for 3 weeks. And, their hormones are just all over the place for a long time. And then you'll talk to women who are really healthy who will say, one day I just started thinking to myself, I must have had menopause because I can't remember the last menstrual period. Sure has been a long time. So it's everything from long periods of time of irregularity to being regular like clockwork, a little bit of irregularity, and then you don't have any menstrual periods and think back to, gosh, when was the last one? And it's pretty uneventful and almost a sudden drop off. The longer, generally, the more miserable. That's a good rule of thumb.
Okay. All right. Well, is there any connection to, I know you mentioned getting the period like in rural China at like 16, 17 years of age, but now I think in your course you said it was 50% of girls between the age of 7 and 8 are
Mm-hmm.
starting to come online, and start their periods. It's like, oh my gosh, a 7 or 8 year old, that's second grade.
Yeah.
That's, I just can't believe that. So is there a connection between the kids who are getting their periods at 6 or 7, or as opposed to rural China and 16, that they are reaching menopause at different times?
Well, it's a sign of the problem. In other words, nature has a very specific plan for every species. And when you think about it, I mean, infants are born at 6 to 8 pounds, human infants, and elephants are born at a different weight, and kittens are weaned at a particular time. I mean, if you look at nature, everything's real predictable in nature until you get to humans. And one of the reasons why we humans can be so unpredictable is because we have something called free choice and the ability to do things. So my cat at home, he eats what I feed him. He can't get in the car in the middle of the night and go to Kroger and buy stuff kitties aren't supposed to eat. So his lifespan and everything else is kind of predictable. With humans, when you eat a poor diet, a lot of animal foods, dairies in particular, you gain weight. Weight gain messes up your hormones. Pretty cute because your fat cells pump out hormones that are converted to estrogen. So when you see a young girl starting to sexually mature at a really early age and start her menstrual period, even at age 10 or 11 is really pretty young. It's kind of normal in our country. That's
Yeah.
about the average in our country, but it's still
Yeah.
pretty young. What you're seeing is a prediction. It's predictive of bad things to come, and the types of bad things are during the reproductive years: PMS, endometriosis, infertility, heavy menstrual bleeding, fibroids. So you have a few decades of that kind of misery, followed by the menopausal misery, which is the hot flashes and the night sweats and the mood swings and the weight gain and all that sort of thing, and the irregular menstrual periods. So if you want to take a look at what your health future looks like at any stage in your life, take a look at what's going on right now, and you can usually find some clues that you're heading in a direction that at some point in time is not going to be so good.
Right. Wow. So, what changes are we starting to see as a woman faces menopause? I mean, like I've heard like some women like have an increased libido as they approach menopause, but some others, it's like, "Yeah, no, don't come near me,
Mhm.
and everything in between. So, what are some of the changes that we're going to see? I mean,
Well, I think the first thing is that a lot of times we attribute a lot of changes that happen to hormones, and it isn't all hormones. And I'll give you an example of this. Women who are in their menopause in those years, late 40s, early 50s to mid 50s, increased risk of heart attack was not because their hormone levels are changing. It's because that's the age where bad habits catch up with women. Okay.
mhm,
And I think we could say that in general. In other words, if women are notorious sometimes for taking care of everybody first before they take care of themselves. And so if you've been doing that and you really have neglected yourself, you're overweight and you haven't been exercising and you've been eating poorly and all that sort of thing, the cumulative effect of it starts to settle in the older you get. And I'm 62, and I can tell you, I work a lot harder to stay lean right now than I did when I was 22, and that's just the way it is. Okay, so what happens is several things. The first thing is that decades of bad habits catch up. And that's when women will say, my gosh, I'm gaining weight at a rapid rate that scares the heck out of me. I'm not going to be able to get through my front door if it keeps going like this, to feeling terrible, tired,
Yeah.
and dry skin or oily skin. I mean, acne, all kinds of problems. And so a lot of that's the cumulative effect. And then you get the stuff that's definitely hormone related, which is the heavy menstrual periods and irregular cycles and the night sweats and the hot flashes, which can sometimes be so miserable. I mean, I've had women tell me over the years, we have to do something about the hot flashes because several times a day, I sometimes have to go home and change my clothes. They're so severe. Okay.
Wow.
And I wake up in the middle of the night 3 times, and I sometimes have to change the bed sheets because there's soap. So that's the hormone related stuff. And then a lot of the rest of it is life and bad habits catching up with you.
Wow. Okay. What about facial breakouts like acne? I mean, like
Yeah.
I know some women get this horrendous acne, but then the rest of your skin is like the Sahara Desert, but you get these
Right.
patches of acne.
Yeah, that's hormonal, generally speaking. Just as acne can be hormonally driven or diet driven,
Right.
even in younger years. So that's your hormones all over the place. And by the way, one thing that is, I think, really misunderstood, and you learn this in our women's health course, is that menopause is universally, not universally, but almost universally defined by many medical doctors as an estrogen deficiency disease, when actually estrogen levels can be quite high after menopause, not because your ovaries are pumping out the estrogen, but because fat cells pump out hormones converted to estrogen by an enzyme called aromatase in the bloodstream. So it's quite possible to be 60 years old, have had 8 years since your last menstrual period. If you're 60, 70 pounds overweight, your estrogen levels might be higher than a woman who's 32 and menstruating. So that's, by the way, one of the reasons why a commonly prescribed solution is, how about some progesterone cream?
Mm.
Because what you do is you match that high estrogen level with progesterone, and it calms down the action of estrogen. It's really treating a symptom, not the cause. And I would argue it's not a very good way to approach it. But that's why progesterone works, is because it balances out those high estrogen levels. So a lot of menopausal women don't really realize, miserable menopausal women don't realize their estrogen levels are still pretty high.
Wow. Well, is menopause different for women who've had children as opposed to not having children?
Not necessarily. The big issue is your habits over a period of time. I remember we have a business in China, and our Chinese business partner grew up in rural China under 12. She grew up in Beijing, and then she was in a labor camp. Her parents were enemies of the Cultural Revolution. Kind of an interesting story. And when she got to the United States, she veered away from her Chinese diet, but quickly got back on it because she got overweight and sick. A lot of it,
Yeah.
and she thought this is the difference. Well, anyway, she still has close ties to China, which is one of the reasons she's a business partner. But when we first got to know each other, and we were getting to be friends, and we were talking about some of these issues, she was new enough to this country that the term menopause didn't really. It's like, what is that? And I'm talking to her about it, and she goes, I guess I just don't understand. For me, I just stopped, And so the difference really is the diet and lifestyle. Lean women who have eaten well they normally will have like some hot flashes, night sweats or something like that, but it's nothing that bothers them. And I remember when I was going through the process, and I would get, I'm trying to think of how to describe it, because there's some women that are going to listen to this and probably get kind of angry when I say it, but I would get like this brief electrical surge, like just a moment of hotness, and it would be enough to make me stop and think that it just happened, but then it would go away. And then that happens from time to time, and I'll tell you something interesting about it. It usually was when I was stressed about something, like I'm running behind or I can't get something to work, and I would notice it. And then one day I thought to myself, I can't remember the last time that happened, and that was menopause for me. Okay, so
Yeah, don't let other women know about
yeah,
that.
other women will hate
Seriously.
me for saying that.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you
It's like my
something.
girlfriend who said, who went through labor and had almost no labor pains and popped the
Mhm.
puppy out in, like 10 minutes, and like, yeah, don't
Don't
share
tell other
that.
women that. Yeah.
No. No.
Yeah,
They'll hurt
but you know
you.
what? I had, this is an interesting thing. Before I changed my diet, which is now over 25 years ago, I was, first of all, pretty chubby. I mean, I used to call myself chubby, but actually I was fat. That was the politically correct thing was Pam was a little chubby, but actually I was fat. I used to eat a terrible diet and all that. Well, my point is that I was placed on birth control pills because my menstrual periods were irregular and heavy.
Yeah.
My habits were so bad, I ended up getting cervical dysplasia and having a leak conization. And I was eating cheese. I was fat. I was eating cheese, taking birth control pills, all risk factors for that happening. I had the best OB-GYN in the city. He literally, by Columbus Monthly, rated the best one in the city. Lovely person. And I'm sure he didn't mean to hurt me, but he said, a lot of women get this. Don't worry about it. You'll probably be fine. And so the reason I bring that up is that had I not made the changes that I did 25 years ago, you could, again, like I said earlier, you can set the stage and see what's going to happen to you by looking at what's going on right now. So at 38, overweight, using birth control pills to keep from having menstrual periods from hell, and having had that little episode with the cervical dysplasia, I was heading for miserable menopause. I would have been one of those people soaking through my clothes and getting up in the middle of the night and changing the sheets and the whole nine yards. So it was the intervention at age 38 that kept the misery from happening at age 51 or whenever it actually was. I can't remember exactly.
So what causes the hot sweats, the night sweats, the hot flashes? Why?
Hormones all over the place. And it's really high unopposed estrogen levels. And so that's again why the prescription is often progesterone cream. Because progesterone balances out estrogen during our reproductive years. And since progesterone facilitates pregnancy, we really shut down the progesterone factory almost entirely at a certain age. And a lot of women don't know that, so they're slathering progesterone all over their bodies to try and balance out the estrogen. I said, you realize that progesterone is a hormone that facilitates pregnancy? I'm 62 years old. If I found out I was pregnant, I'd drive my car into the Olentangy River. I can't.
I'd be right behind you.
Yeah, are you kidding me, right? So this is not normal to need progesterone in large amounts when you're 55 or 60 years old. So it's the hormones all over the place that are causing it.
So is that like your body burning it off?
It's just hormone dysregulation because it affects your thyroid and your hypothalamus and all the controls on body temperature. Okay, that's what's happening is everything in the body is interconnected. Right. And that's a different way of looking at the body than the way the medical profession looks at the body, where you go to different doctors for different body parts and everything that happens to you is a separate thing. So if you've got a weight problem, you go to an endocrinologist, and if you've got hot flashes, you go to a gynecologist, and if you're having depression, you go to a psychiatrist, and everybody, so everybody's dealing with a different part of the body. Well, all this stuff is interrelated. And so when your hormones are all dysregulated, this is going to affect your thyroid and your hypothalamus, things that control the temperature regulation of your body. And that's why things are all over the place. The difficult thing, when women are 40 years old and they've been not taking good care of themselves, they got plenty of time to lean down, exercise, change their diets, get to the place where they can have a pretty uneventful menopause. But what's really difficult is when you're in the midst of this horror, saying, please make it go away. And you can't flip a switch, because if you're 50 pounds overweight, it takes time to take that weight off, and to change your physiology. But the best way to do it is to lose weight, change your diet, exercise, etc., because then you get a permanent fix. And you're at the same time reducing your risk of breast cancer, ovarian cancer, uterine cancer, heart attack, diabetes, all the other things you don't want to have happen. Again, looking at the interconnected nature of this. So when women talk to me about their hot flashes, I understand they're miserable. But what I'm thinking in the back of my head is, I know you're miserable and we have to fix that. I have to show you some ways in which you might fix that. But the other thing is, you have no idea how much your risk is so much higher for every other bad thing that you don't want to have happen. So I'm so glad you're talking to me about hot flashes than breast cancer, right?
Yeah, for sure. Just going back to your comment, I got to share a quick story. When I started perimenopausal, I started getting migraines for the first time ever in my life. I'd never had a migraine before this. So my regular doctor said, oh, I want you to see a specialist because this is not normal. So I went to a specialist, okay?
Of course.
I went to a specialist. He ran every test. And this was over a 6-month period. He ran every test you could possibly think of. And he really had me so upset. And my kids were in their teenager years. And so I'm a single mom at the time. And I'm wow, what happens if I die? Literally, this guy was telling me you better go pick your coffin out because like this is not good. I've never seen people starting, migraines in usually it's a sign of a tumor, et cetera, et cetera.
Oh my gosh.
And so I literally for 6 months, I'm not kidding you, my levels of stress were so high and I was so upset, really worried. And I started even like contacting a lawyer because if I died, and just all this mental stuff. And then I go to my gynecologist for my annual, check under the hood. And she said, has anything changed? And I said, oh my God, I started getting these migraines. And it's the first time. And I'm going to, and she said, oh yeah, I see it all the time. And I'm like, what? She says, it's hormonal. After you get through menopause, you're going to stop. And I'm like, you need to go talk to the neurologist. The specialist in head issues had no clue, had me 1 foot in the grave. And so people don't understand, you can't just isolate a part.
Right. Exactly.
It's the whole body.
That's the way medicine is practiced. And so, I'm hard on medical doctors. People who listen to me often know that. But where the system really steps in is the short visit makes it impossible to deal with the whole person because you just don't have enough time to ask enough questions to know the whole person.
Yeah. No.
And then doctors don't get any nutrition to speak of in school, which is a limiting factor. And the system is set up for you to go from doctor to doctor. Everybody's got a body part. So what we have is a very good colleague of mine who I respect a lot. He has a term for it. It's good apples in a bad barrel. So there are some good doctors out there, but they find themselves in a bad situation. It's difficult for them to do the right things.
Right. It's tough. It's tough because they've got this set up 10 minutes, write a prescription, and you're out the door.
Yeah.
So for some women, their desire for sex has decreased. Is this normal?
Well, there are so many reasons why women can have lower or higher libido. Sometimes when you're not worried about pregnancy anymore, sex is really yummy. We don't have to worry about any barrier systems anymore. And then the kids are out of the house and we're by ourselves, that kind of thing. So it can increase libido. The other thing that can happen is, again, when I spoke earlier about things catching up with you. So you haven't been taking care of yourself. You don't even feel good about yourself. You've gained a lot of weight, you're tired, your hair doesn't look right, you're overweight, all these kinds of things going on. And maybe your spouse or significant other, whoever it is, has had the same thing happen. And when you don't feel good physically, you don't feel like doing anything. You don't want to go for a run and you don't want to have sex either. It's you just don't feel like doing anything. So sometimes that's the thing. It's a matter of you need to start taking care of your body and liking yourself again and investing in your physiology and all that sort of thing. And it can change that way. And sometimes it's a relationship issue. I've had women sit in my office and say, I don't like my husband anymore. I should have divorced him a long time ago. I hate to hear that, but I do hear it. Yeah. So there can be a variety of reasons. And then vaginal dryness is an issue too. One great product, you can buy it online, it's called Multi-Gin Lubricare. And it's not hormones. It just plumps up and hydrates the tissues. It's good for post-childbirth. It's good for menopausal vaginal dryness, and it doesn't contain hormones.
Wait a minute. So what's it called again?
It's called Multi-Gin, Gyn, Lubricare. Okay. In all the years I've been telling women about it, I've only had one woman who said it didn't help her, but nothing else I ever told her helped her either. So I took it with a grain of salt. But it's that can sometimes make a big difference. If sex is painful, you certainly don't feel like it either. So the first thing you have to do is figure out what's really going on here and how do we solve it. Another thing that can happen is people, it's not that they don't like their spouse, it's that they're disconnected from their spouse. Years of jobs and running around and doing everything but investing in each other, it's time for renewal. So one example I'll give you is I have a friend in another state. This happened several years ago. And that was pretty much what happened to them. They just had been living in the same house, doing everything but paying attention to each other. And they went away to a marriage renewal retreat. And it was unbelievable because I saw them when they were just sort of in the same room together. And then earlier this year, I had a chance to see them again when we all ended up at the same event. And these were two people who were just mad about each other. It was a big change. So they just needed reconnection. Right. So lots of reasons that can happen. Let's face it, menopause is a time of transition, not just in menstrual periods, but it's a transition in life. Things
Hmm.
change. And life is different when you're older. Life is different when the kids are gone. Life is different when you're reconnecting with a spouse that you haven't had time to pay attention to, or when you're trying to figure out what you're going to do next because you've been investing in your family and now you have time. So transition is tough for humans.
Hmm.
It's kind of hard being a human. We don't get instructions for how to do it.
There's
So,
no user manual.
yeah, there's no user manual. So some of us are just figuring it out as we go along, and you come to little bumps in the road, just trying to figure out what the heck am I going to do with myself, you know?
Right. Exactly. Because we're coming up. It's a scary time because you're transitioning from working. I mean, and frankly, I'm looking forward to it because I'm finishing up after teaching, I don't know, like over 3 decades in the classroom, chemistry, environmental science, biology. I'm ready.
Mm-hmm.
And we're moving on. We're going to move up to the Cape. We're creating a plant-based destination vacation and
Mm-hmm.
helping people to transition into a healthy lifestyle. So I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to embracing that change coming up on Cape Cod. So if you ever want to come for a vacation, Cape Cod, amazing
Oh,
place.
I've never been there. I'll probably
Oh
take
my
you.
God. No, seriously. It's incredible. I mean, there's so many different environments. I mean, from the Bayside to cold Atlantic to Atlantic, but not quite as cold and intense as the huge waves on the Atlantic. And then
Mhm.
kettle ponds, crystal clear ponds, and then biking and kayaking and oh my gosh. I mean, and this is one of the things, and I think we talked about this last time, is we can move,
Mhm.
because most of my friends, like a lot of my friends that I take up and we go up to the Cape a lot, I have to like dial down what I'm doing. Not to say that I'm this super achiever or, in shape, but half my friends can't do what I do.
Right.
That I'm this super buff person. No, no. But I love kayaking. I'm out all day long, kayaking 10, 12 miles. Not a big deal. But my
Right.
friends can't handle a lot of the stuff. Or biking,
Well, you
you
know
know.
what's difficult. It's even worse than that. One of our associates here is it helps us with marketing. It's a part-time gig for him, but we were looking at dinner dates. He does so much work, and I wanted to take him and his wife for dinner. He's much younger than I am. And so we're looking at calendars, and it's like, oh, we're going to a wedding this weekend, we're going to a wedding this weekend. Okay, so in their age range, they're going to weddings. My
Right.
age range, I'm going to funerals,
Oh,
which is really disturbing
yeah.
because I'll tell you what, I'm way too young to die. I'm not ready to check out yet. But when you get into 60s, 70s, my dad's 87. He's gone to a lot of funerals because people don't take care of themselves and they're dying much earlier than they need to.
Yeah.
And what's even more distressing, we're all going to die sooner or later. And I'm assuming that when it's time to go, I'll kind of be ready for it. But what I don't want to do, and what I see happen all the time that's just painful to watch, is that slow descent into disability, and your world shrinks. Like every year you can do less than you did before, and your choices are more limited, and it's like it's stabbing pain when people say, well, we always wanted to go to Scandinavia, but we've gotten to an age where we just can't go.
Right.
Well, I mean, you don't have to swim there, for crying out loud. You get on a plane. I mean, seriously,
Yeah.
to be 75 years old and not be able to get on a plane and go someplace you want to go is so sad to me. I can't begin to tell you. And
I
I don't
know.
want to end up that way. You and I aren't going to end up that way. But again, looking at these issues being a peek into what's going to happen in the future. If you're having hot flashes at 55, think about how bad things are going to be by the time you're 75. You're going to be one of
Right.
those people saying, gosh, I always wanted to go to Africa, but now I can't do it because I just can't move
Right.
around.
Well, my mother-in-law just passed on, and she went in at 72 to the nursing home, and she retired at 55 and basically sat in front of the TV and did not a whole lot. I
Which
mean,
is
she traveled,
disastrous.
exactly, not in terms of her mind, and she didn't do a whole lot. I mean, they traveled a little bit, but that was it. And they ate the wrong foods. And by 72, she was in a nursing home for Alzheimer's. And when she went in, it was at $4,000. And this is not a major metropolitan city, so it's more rural, so the cost is not as expensive. But at the end, and she lasted until she just passed on. She was like 70, 78, 79, somewhere in there. It was almost $9,000 a
Oh,
month.
oh my gosh.
A month.
Yeah.
And then we've got at that end, we've got Alzheimer's, and the other end, we've got autism.
Hmm.
I mean, I've been hearing some very disturbing numbers. Like right now, it's 1 out of 68 in terms of autism, and that's from the CDC. But coming up, I've heard some other numbers: 1 out of 3.
Well, 1 out of 6 children right now has some type of developmental issue. And if we keep going the way that we're going now, by the year 2050, 50% of all kids will have some type of developmental
And I
delay.
see it in the classroom. I do.
Yeah,
I do not teach the same way I did 25 years ago because they can't handle it.
right,
They cannot handle it.
right.
So,
We're saying, and just think what's going to happen with those kids. I mean, all the way, girls, going to our topic, what kind of menopause they're going to have. So the bottom line, I think that the point that is always important to come back to is that human beings are supposed to be able to live until they die. And of course, at the end of your life, my grandmother died at 92, I think it was, or something like that. About couple weeks before she died, her liver, we ended up taking her to the hospital. She just didn't look right. She didn't feel right. And she was confused, and she had not been confused. And so her liver was failing. She was 90 some years old. Her liver was failing, and then she died. That's really what's supposed to happen. You're not supposed to spend the majority of your life with some type of sickness or
yeah.
disability or something of this nature. And we've gotten away from that to the place where people are spending so much of their lifespan being sick,
Yes.
even at younger ages, that they can't enjoy life to the fullest the way that they want to. And when you can't enjoy life, I mean, and it saddens me because I love life. I'm having a great time.
Yeah,
And,
right?
and it gets better all the time. In fact, I think if I could find a way to live to be 140, I'd want to do it. So it's just so sad to hear people miserable. Menopause symptoms are just one of the types of misery, but it goes beyond that. It does go beyond that.
I mean, we're not living longer, we're dying slower.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's a good point.
I
Right.
mean, and I see it all the time. I mean, friends, one of the nice things about living plant based is that I'm more active and my whole social interactions have changed. And
Mm-hmm.
I still do get phone calls from my old friends. And I spend half the time on the phone listening to their litany of, I just had a stroke. I mean, one of my best friends, who's 3 days older than I am, has had several strokes already. And I'm like, really? Diabetes and all these other health issues. And she calls me to tell me about it. And I'm like, has anything positive happened? I mean, seriously? Because that's all her focus is she's on the medical treadmill and she just goes from doctor to doctor. Anyway,
Yeah. Yeah.
so tell me why hot flashes seem to be worse during the night.
Well, night sweats are it's basically you're having a hot flash. Sometimes the sleep cycles. Remember, hormones control everything, so your
Right.
hormone fluctuations go on through the night. And so when you have a hot flash, if you're having hot flashes at night, your night sweats are going to be essentially the same thing. During the daytime, you change your clothes. At nighttime, you change your sheets, and it disturbs sleep. I mean, you wake up, and of
Oh,
course, you know
yeah.
that deep sleep that you want to get depends upon staying sound asleep for a good long period of time. So your sleep cycle is interrupted. Well, and this is the vicious cycle. Okay, so if your sleep cycles are screwed up, now your hormone levels become dysregulated. You don't even have to be in menopause to have dysregulated hormones as a result of sleep disruption.
Wow.
So you're sweating in the bed and it wakes you up, and now your hormones are even crazier, so you're sweating some more, which wakes you up, and then that causes more weight gain too, because sleep disruption causes cortisol levels to be higher, which results in more fat storage. And the other thing, I found this last year, I found some studies showing that the craving for bad food and the amount of bad food people eat goes up exponentially in relationship to the level of sleep deprivation they're experiencing.
Really?
Don't make really good choices when they're sleep deprived. Anything that interrupts your sleep then is counterproductive. So it's a vicious
Right.
cycle, and things get worse instead of better. Sometimes these things go away. Like it's not unusual for women to suffer for 7, 8 years, and then the hot flashes and night sweats stop, just plain stop. But 7 or 8 years of that's a lot to deal with. And
Yeah.
that's why women will go get hormone replacement, because they just reach a point they say, I can't stand this anymore. And they don't
Yeah.
know anything else to do.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, is there any health benefits to the hot flashes? I mean, like for example, a fever is going to kill, bacteria, in your body. Is there any benefits to this?
Well, here, I'm kind of smiling because here's the benefit. It's telling you, pay attention. Your health is in trouble. It's a wake up call. Okay.
Okay.
And by the way, if we'd all live our lives that way, where when something is wrong,
Right.
pay attention to it, But the first time that I encountered this normalizing of sickness is what I call it, was when somebody said to me, I have I have breast cancer and I'm just shocked because up until now I've been perfectly healthy. So the person saying this to me was 50 pounds overweight, okay, and had a medical history that included taking antibiotics 5 or 6 times a year for sinus infections, and had her gallbladder taken out, the whole nine. And so I said, as gracefully as I could, can you please tell me what about this medical history made you think you were a healthy person? She goes, oh, that stuff? Well, everybody has that stuff. Okay. So that's why I call it the normalizing of sickness.
Yeah.
So when things aren't right, and we have to make sure we don't go off the deep end where people are so obsessed about their health that, gosh, I've got a pain in my elbow. Does this mean I have bone cancer? I mean, we have a lot of that kind of hysteria too. But if you're taking antibiotics 6 times a year for sinus infections, something is terribly wrong. You should figure out what that is. Go see somebody and figure it out.
Get to the root cause.
Yeah, if you are 50 pounds overweight, look at yourself in the mirror. There's something wrong. You should figure out how that happened and fix it, because these are all, again, those warning signs. Things are not going well. It's sort of like when you hear strange noises with your car, you don't say to yourself, well, cars make noise. You say, I think I better take this thing in before I drive to Toledo next weekend, right?
Right.
If you treat your body the same way, we'd have an intervention at an earlier stage when things hadn't accelerated to such a crisis as they sometimes do.
Wow. Okay. Well, how long are these hot flashes going to last? And is there anything that we can do to minimize them or manage them?
Sometimes I've said to women, if you, and I understand this, there's the benefit of HRT, hormone replacement therapy, is that you get an immediate relief from your problem if the dosage is right and that sort of thing. It's not a good plan. I mean, hormones, any type of exogenous hormones will increase your risk of many types of cancer. So you don't want to do this for a long time. But if you do this for a few months while you're losing the weight, changing your diet, getting into an exercise pattern, and it allows you to start sleeping through the night and not feeling like you want to strangle people all day long and that sort of thing, I think that that's okay. I mean, I think that it's important for women to understand the risks associated with HRT, because then that can be very motivating to do the things from a diet and lifestyle standpoint that they need to do rather than just relying on HRT. So that's the quick fix. A long time fix, the permanent fix, is you got to change those habits, lose that weight, get out and move around and that sort of thing.
Well, I was going to say, do you ever recommend hormone therapy?
Only for immediate symptom relief, because you just can't take it anymore. And then other than that, it's a bad idea.
It doesn't stop it. It just delays it.
Well, it covers up the symptoms. Okay. Right. So and again, we have to look at this with some reasonableness. If you have a splitting headache once a year and take an aspirin, I'm not really concerned about that. But if you're taking NSAIDs every day because your knee hurts, well, now what we're doing is we're just covering up the symptom. You're not doing anything about that knee, which could be caused by anything from lack of movement and exercise to an irregular, off-balance gait to just carrying too much weight or whatever. So NSAIDs for the next couple of weeks while you start getting everything taken care of so the knee doesn't hurt is one thing. Ignoring the knee and just taking NSAIDs for 5 years, bad idea, really bad idea. So for temporary relief, okay. And you don't usually get, my experience with informing people properly is that when people fully understand risks and benefits of things, they generally make responsible decisions, because we know that they do that in other areas where they make consumer purchases. I mean, and I really think that healthcare choices, diet choices, it's just like buying houses, cars, retirement accounts, blenders, washing machines, and college educations for your kids. Right? You ask questions, you look into things, you make the best choices. And I'll tell you something, if you ask people in my age range, I'm 62, looking back at the houses and cars and washing machines and all the stuff you bought, do you think you generally made good decisions? Most of us would say, yeah, I think I have. For the most part, yeah. Maybe a couple of things I would have done differently, but pretty good. Ask people how they feel about the decisions they made medically. And what I hear all the time is, my gosh, if I'd known then what I know now,
right.
I wouldn't have let them take my gallbladder out. I wouldn't have taken this drug. I never would have let them do this test. Right. Well, and you can fill in the blank and put anything there. So the difference between the two is not that it's easier to understand buying a car. I'm an idiot about cars. It's because we know we're supposed to ask questions about the cars. We know we're supposed to check stuff out. We just don't check anything out when it comes to healthcare. The neighbor says, I'm eating a paleo diet and I lost weight. And somebody responds, okay, I'll do that. Okay. A doctor says, I'm going to, I think you should have an operation that takes 6 hours and it'll take you 6 months to recover. Okay, great, fine, let's do it. Let's shake out the calendars. So we just go brain dead a lot of times when we're making these healthcare decisions, and devastating consequences from that.
Truly. Absolutely. Oh my gosh. Do women typically get more urinary tract? I know I did. I mean,
Yeah.
urinary tract infections. I never had a urinary tract infection until I hit perimenopause. And then from perimenopause and through pretty much the end of menopause, oh my God. Yeah. I mean, it was bad.
Yeah, and you have to break the cycle of antibiotics, which makes you more susceptible to the next infection, and et cetera. So the first thing is, the older you get, the more your dehydration type habits impact you negatively. So the first thing I tell people, you got to start drinking 64 ounces of water every day. You got to do it, okay? And I see you got yours there, yeah. Because and it's everything from preventing heart attacks to preventing bladder infections and UTIs, that sort of thing. It's really important with heart attacks. People don't understand 60% of your blood plasma is water.
Yeah.
So when you don't drink enough water, your plasma shrinks down, it becomes thick and viscous, and then your arteries and vessels have to shrink down because you can't have empty spaces. And it's one of the reasons why people have heart attacks in the morning. It's the most dehydrated they are all day. So that's an important reason to drink enough water. But keeping enough water going through your kidneys and your entire urinary system is important. And I'll tell you what I think is interesting. I have a cat. He's going to be 14 years old in August. He's a male cat.
Schroeder.
Schroeder, yeah, you remember. Well, if I was doing this from home, you would have heard from Schroeder by now.
But got to be in your face. As soon as you have your attention focused on one thing, it's like, pay attention to me now.
Yeah, exactly. And he's very loud. He has a loud meow. But anyway, vets are really good. I've had male cats most of my adult life, and I've always been told by vets when my cats get older, now you got to make sure they drink a lot of water. So one of the things you want to do is like add some extra water to their wet food, and they have all these strategies that you really want a lot of water going through the system. Nobody's telling the humans that, right? The doctors are not telling humans that. So drinking enough water is important. There are some plant antimicrobials that I often recommend because antibiotics are so overused, and the risk of antibiotic resistant infections is becoming significant. We're seeing MRSA and C. diff in community settings, which is really concerning right now. Some plant antimicrobials, if you can avoid antibiotics, that'll help. Strong probiotics to replace the bacteria that's all been destroyed from all the antibiotic treatment. Cranberry juice, not from concentrate, really is helpful, and as is honey. There are medical articles published in medical journals about the antibacterial effects of honey. So some vegans don't want to eat honey, and I understand that. But if you're not a vegan that's bothered by that, raw honey is very, very helpful for avoiding infection.
Good to know. One of my favorite drinks in the morning, if I wake up and I've been snoring or something and my throat's dry, I take 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar, 2 tablespoons of applesauce, 1 tablespoon of raw honey in 20 ounces or about 18 ounces of hot water in my canteen. And I'll sip on that. Wow. I mean, gone. Whatever irritations or whatever it calms and soothes, it's just amazing. Yeah, so that's my favorite morning winter drink. So, do you recommend any natural supplements, during menopause?
Not really. And they don't really work very well. They're not anywhere near as well as they're advertised. So there's nothing that works better than cleaning up your diet and weight loss. Yeah. People don't realize how many problems you have from carrying extra weight. I mean, every fat cells pump out hormones, which we've been talking about. They also pump out inflammatory cytokines. So the people who are overweight or obese are in a constant state of inflammation, not always low level, sometimes high level. That increases your risk of everything that you don't want to get. So I think it's important to get that weight off and to eat well and exercise. I do recommend if people are eating a vegan diet, low dose B12 a couple times a week, and then I kind of think probiotics are a good thing to take. And the reason is most of us have done so many things to destroy our gut microbiomes that
Hmm.
and we don't really have a lot of long-term research showing that if you restore your gut with probiotics, how long it sticks, if that makes sense,
Yeah.
because most of the science that's published about the gut, the vast majority of it's been since 2004, the bulk of the evidence. That's pretty recent stuff. So I think for those of us who've abused ourselves pretty cute, I was one of those people, are probably well advised to take a probiotic.
Well, what about like black cohosh or like
It just,
valerian root to sleep?
it just doesn't work as well as people think, and there are better ways to do it. Like let's figure out why you're not sleeping and fix that.
Okay.
Get to the cause. And what I don't like to be is the holistic pharmacist. And I also think that all medical practices should stand on their own. In other words, if let's take sleeplessness, if you go to a traditional doctor, they prescribe Ambien. You go to a naturopath, they tell you to use valerian. Well, you can say the naturopath was less harmful because the valerian isn't as harmful as the Ambien. But I don't think that the purpose of healthcare is to hurt you less than other types of healthcare professionals. I mean, seriously, what are we going to put on our sign out front? Wellness Farm Health. We hurt you less than the other guys. I mean, is that really why we're showing up here every day?
Yeah.
The objective, we have to set our sights higher. I've said this a lot. We have in healthcare this incredible collision of patients who don't know they can get well, meeting with doctors who don't know they can get well or how to make them well. And I think we have to be careful to not overpromise. Not everybody is capable of getting well. Some people have just abused themselves to the place where they can't. Everybody's capable of getting better. But let's go for as better as we can get instead of saying, how about if I do a 7-minute visit and give you valerian instead of the other 7-minute visit that gives you Ambien? We're still working within the same ineffective paradigm, and I don't want to do that.
Excellent. Well, what about like phytoestrogens during menopause? What are your thoughts on them? Do you recommend or stay away? What are your thoughts?
Well, phytoestrogens are misunderstood. Everybody thinks about soy and
Right.
isoflavones. Phytoestrogens are a type of isoflavone. People don't realize that those are in apricots too. So you get all this hysteria about soy, but nobody has any emails called the dark side of apricots. So I think the don't look for magical foods and magical supplements. Look for health
Right.
promoting patterns. And so what I say about soy, for example, if you like it, eat it. If you don't, there's no mandate to. You could not eat any soy for the next 40 years. You'd be just fine. And if you want to eat tofu in your stir fry, you'll be just fine. So really choose foods because you like them and get the dietary pattern right, and don't look for the food that's going to solve your problem. It's not usually, not ever, a food. It's usually the pattern.
Right. Okay. We kind of been talking about this, but what are the benefits of being plant-based during menopause?
Well, I think the benefit for me is it was a non-event. Nothing changed. I'm serious. It's like, it's just I've been, since I took off all the weight, and I'm not chubby anymore because doesn't that sound better than fat? But since I took off the weight and I changed my diet and all that kind of stuff, I get tired. And I mean, I need a break from things. That's why I go to my place at the lake so I can lay on the couch or on the patio and read a book and relax and all that.
Right.
But that's just recharging your batteries.
Yeah.
But when I'm not recharging my batteries, I have like an unlimited amount of energy to do anything I
I
want
know,
to do.
right?
And I'm not encumbered by the amount of time I see many of my friends investing in doctor visits, pharmacy visits, some type of therapy, surgeries, recovery from surgeries. They get their gallbladders taken out, and then their appendix, and then they have to have a hysterectomy, then they got to have a knee replacement. I mean, it's exhausting, and it's also expensive when you start adding just the copays.
Yes.
So I think that the advantage of living this way is you really do get to live until you die. And so right here in the office, not right at this minute, but my dad is on the other side of the building. He works here 3 days a week. So we have the 87-year-old version of you and I. No drugs, no doctor visits, living on his own, driving a car, going to visit family in New Jersey, out on a boat in the Atlantic Ocean, living a full life and having a great time unencumbered by all of these things too. So I think that's what we really want to aspire to, is to live our full life until we die. And that's what people aren't doing. That's what we get to do, having made these choices. It's your best protection. It's your best shot at a fabulous, glorious life for your entire time on the planet.
Well, is there better foods to consume during menopause? Like I mean, obviously, just in the plant-based
Mm-hmm.
rainbow of foods, is there some that are better for you than others during
No,
menopause?
just eat the food. And the reason I don't like to get into the better foods for this, and I'll tell you, share a story with you that goes back a lot of years. It was in my formative years of learning how to do this. And I remember having a conversation with a woman, not menopausal, but we were talking about other things. And so I said, "Well, how are you doing?" She goes, "It's all right." I said, "What do you mean?" She goes, "I'm eating the kale. I'm eating green apples." I said, "Well, it doesn't sound like you like kale or green apples." She said, "I don't." I said, "Well, why are you eating them?" She goes, "Well, I read about kale's good for you, and I read green apples are better for you." I said, "Oh my gosh." I said, "You have to stop torturing yourself." I said, "It is painful to listen to." I said, "What kind of apples do you like?" She goes, "I like the yellow ones." I said, "Then start eating those." And what kind of leafy greens do you like? She goes, "I really like those." She was telling me about these hydroponic lettuce heads that they sell in the store. I said, "Go get those." So the point that I'm making is that we sometimes turn this plant-based eating into a chore. Choose the foods that you like and eat those. If you went for the rest of your life and never put a single leaf of kale in your mouth, you'll be okay if you get the dietary pattern right. So you want to enjoy your food
Mm.
and pick the things you like. I like Gold Rush apples, and I like those Bosque pears, and I get these salad greens, the salad green mix from a urban farm here in town. And somebody might taste the Gold Rush apples and say, they're a little bit tart. I
Honey
really like
crisp. Honey
it.
crisp are
Yeah,
my favorite.
yeah. So you like the
Mm.
Honey Crisp and I like the Gold Rush. So the key is to eat the stuff you like and make this
Mm.
fun. And and then once you get the hang of eating well, eating the foods that you like, you can maybe branch out and try some unfamiliar things and see what you like. But if you don't like something, don't choke it down. Don't do that.
Right. How often is there, for a postmenopausal woman or during menopause, what about exercise?
5 or 6.
What form? What about muscle building? I mean, I've heard like you can get better gains after postmenopause with muscle building. Oh,
Well, the
tell me.
recipe for exercise is the same for all adults. And so and I've said for years, you have to work out 5 or 6 days a week for 45 to 60 minutes in your target heart zone. You need to do a couple of aggressive strength training sessions. And you got to do some aerobics. And then if you like yoga and stretching and all that, get some of that in there too. And people say, well,
I just keep I
five
keep
or
thinking
six
about
days.
Dell
Yeah,
and his comments about
yeah,
yoga.
screaming help me at the back of the yoga studio, right? But
Sorry.
but here's the thing: you have to do it if you want to be healthy, because what's happened is we live a fabulous time when you can sit here and change the TV with a remote. The phone walks around with you attached to your body. You don't have to run and get it. We can drive everywhere. All these are wonderful things that make our life great, but we now have to make time to move because our lives don't require so much movement. And and when people argue with me about the investment of that amount of time, I tell them, here's something to think about. And I don't have data to show you, but I would bet half of my net worth that this is true. I think all of us spend the same amount of time on health from birth to death. The question is what we invested in. I'm investing it in the gym and running and yoga and the farmer's market and food prep. Other people are investing it in co-pays for surgery and hospitalizations and standing in line at the pharmacy. We're all going to spend the same amount of time and money on this stuff. It's a question of what you want to spend it on. I think most people, given the choice, would rather go to the gym than have surgery. I really do, as much as they might complain about the gym, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
right?
So that's what you need to do. And the thing to remember, because women are concerned about weight gain, a pound of muscle burns 14 calories and a pound of fat burns 3. So aerobic exercise will help you burn up your fat. Strength training helps you build muscle. And you really turn into that lean, you know, food burning, calorie burning machine. And the reality is, and so I'll say something else that women will hate me for, but I probably burn more calories sleeping than some women burn at work every day because I have a really lean body, muscular body. So, and everybody can do that. I mean, it's not like I'm genetically predisposed. I'm the first normal weight person, female in my family ever. So my genes are not why I'm this way. It's just actually
Ugh.
works. So that's what you do for exercise.
Well, I do things. I sit on this pretty much
Mm-hmm.
most of the time,
Mm-hmm.
and I find myself, because like if I have a minute, like in between like class, I sit it on, if I'm at school and I have a prep period, I'm on this and I'm rocking back and forth, and it helps. I mean, every little bit helps that you can do
Mm-hmm.
things like that. That's a small investment. I also find that I sit up taller and
Right.
straighter because your core has to work because you don't have
Right.
anything supporting you in a chair,
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
what about thinning hair coming into menopause?
Well, that depends. Sometimes thinning hair is heredity. All right. So if your mother had thinning hair, your grandmother, that can be part of it. Sometimes it's due to things like autoimmune disease, or you have to identify the cause. And a little bit of it's normal. Like most women will have some hair thinning at menopause. Some of it will be more aggressive because it's heredity. Sometimes it's more aggressive because it's a sign that you're not healthy. So the frustrating thing about hair is that, unlike a lot of things, like if I decided to lose 10 pounds, okay, I can get that done in a month. Really, if I wanted to lose 10 pounds, I don't need to, but if I needed to lose 10 pounds in a month, I could take it off by eating well and exercising. Hair growth, it takes a long time. There's a huge latency period from when a hair starts growing out of a
Hmm.
follicle and when it actually is visible. So it can take a couple of years sometimes to turn around significant hair loss that is due to poor health.
And then after menopause, does it come back or?
Yeah, you can regrow hair. If you restore your health, and it's not heredity, it's not autoimmune disease or something of that nature that requires treatment. If it's just poor health, it'll grow back.
Okay, because I never went through. I mean, the poof, oh my gosh, it grows so fast, and I have to have it cut like every 4 weeks. I mean, it's crazy. And even going through menopause, I never went through the hair loss that I
Right.
I hear some other women going through. But wow, what do we need to do to focus on like postmenopausal? I mean, for diet, lifestyle. I mean, just continuing on plant based. Is there anything
So,
special we should be doing?
yeah, eating well is, of course, the key. But the other thing is exercise becomes more important because it's your ticket to independence. The number one reason why people end up in nursing homes is frailty.
Hmm.
Okay. And so if you want to be, and I'll use my 87-year-old dad as an example. He's strong. He doesn't fall down the stairs when he's going somewhere and trip over the curb and the whole 9 yards. So the reason he'll probably be able to live on his own, unless something, God forbid, cataclysmic would happen, is because he's strong, he has balance, coordination, he's muscular. But if we don't really work at that, what happens is you become increasingly unstable. And then it's unsafe for you to drive a car. It's unsafe for you to walk around a parking lot to get into the store. It's unsafe for you to live in a place that has stairs. So that's back to what we were talking about earlier, about every year you get older and the world shrinks and you have less and less opportunity to do things. So exercise becomes really important. And so I think if you look at phases of life, in our 20s and 30s, we're concerned about our appearance. In our 40s, 50s, and 60s, we don't want to get chronic and degenerative diseases. And if we're successful at that and continue our good habits, what we want to avoid is disability in the nursing home. That's where taking care of
Yeah,
is important.
that's one of the biggest things. I mean, after watching my mother-in-law and my mother also died of many symptoms, but dementia was one of them. And I, just seeing that to go through, I don't want to do that. I don't. I'm doing everything possible to make sure that I don't want to get. And I told my daughter, if I end up in the nursing home, put the pillow over me, please,
Yeah, nobody
please.
wants to end up there. And
Oh
you
my
certainly
god.
don't want to end up in memory care, right?
Oh no, I don't. And that's one of the reasons why I do this is because I don't want to be there. I don't want to have that happen. Anyway, is there any benefit to postmenopause?
Yeah, I think that a lot of it's your attitude about getting older. I'll tell you what I like about being my age. I'm not an idiot anymore.
Right? Right?
You get smarter. There's a mellowness that you're just not as reactive to things as you once were. There's wisdom in age. You get to make more choices. Most of us have gotten to a place where we have a little bit more options financially. So yeah, I think there's been a benefit to every age. I've never dreaded. I have friends who've dreaded getting older. I don't dread it. I don't want to leave the planet. I mean, I feel pretty strongly about that. I mean, if it's my time to go, I guess I would come to peace with it. But I guess I like getting older. It sure beats the alternative. Let's put it that way.
True. Absolutely. No, well, and also too, I mean, like in terms of being intimate with my husband, I mean, we don't have to worry about a period. We don't have to worry about contraceptives anymore. It's like there's the spontaneity that's still there.
Right.
So I'm loving that part. It's like not
Absolutely.
having to deal with birth control. Thank you. Yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Well, I have one more question for you, and I know that I just have to ask, what made you go plant-based?
Common sense. I mean, I was very lucky because I was 38 years old, as I mentioned, and not in very good health at all, and eating terrible food and just not investing in myself at all. I read John McDougall's book. It turned me around, and I guess I had the advantage of being able to make an intellectual decision about this to say, look, I'm fat and I don't look so good and I'm tired all the time, but I'm not sick. Nothing terrible is wrong with me. So I have an opportunity to make this change before something bad happens. And it just made sense to me. So I did. And I'm sort of one of those jump off the cliff and do stuff kind of persons. That's just the way I do things. So
Yeah.
that's the way I made this change too. And I just really feel like a very, very fortunate person. I've been lucky all my life. I've had a really blessed life. I thank God every day for it. This is just one of many blessings, but it's a big one because if you don't have your health, I mean, what good is money? What good is anything else if you don't have your health? People would give up almost anything for it. So this is maybe
Yeah.
one of the most fortunate things that ever happened for me.
I mean, do you feel frustrated? Like you had mentioned, like a lot of your family has not.
No, I don't let myself go there because I want to stay all bright eyed and bushy tailed for people who want help. And what I've learned over time is you wait for teachable moments and you just become, by example, the go to person when something happens. And I wish people would make me the go to person before something happens. But the bottom line is that I've picked up a lot of passengers over the last 25 years because people who weren't interested, they become really interested when they have a health challenge. And that often is the thing that causes the conversion. So I just focus on being a good example, making sure that I stay in this business. There's a lot to be had from just staying power and wait for those opportunities, and they do come up.
Okay. Well, I try every time, but my brother just announced that he was on a diet, and I said, "Oh, great!" Because he needs to lose. He's morbidly obese, and he needed to lose weight. And I said, "Oh, so what are you doing? What?" And he showed me, and it was a paleo, and I was just like,
Well, well, that's okay. You have to just let people do what they're going to do and wait for those teachable moments and just be there. Just being there is the thing.
"Yeah, it's tough. And you hate to see it in your own family. You do."
Right.
But Pam, as always, I've learned so much from you. You're
Well,
just
thank
a
you. You're a great
fount of
interviewer.
you're
We can do this anytime. I always enjoy spending time with you.
you're a fount of knowledge, seriously. And you help so many people. So thank you. For the
Hey.
other people who can't say that, I'm just going to say it to you. Thank you so much because you shed light in such an amazing way. I mean, you've got the research, you've been doing it, you've clearly have read, and you're living it. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.